Welcome back to Knee to Knee. I'm your host, Mark Marrott, and I'm really glad you're here for this one today. In just a minute, you're going to meet Brad Zeeman, a retired Utah Highway Patrolman, a career safety professional, and one of those rare guys who genuinely makes every person he talks to feel like they're the most important person in the room. And on a side note, if this show has ever hit home for you, go ahead and hit the like button now and make certain that you're subscribed so you don't miss the great conversations that are upcoming. So when it comes to Brad, he and I go way back. We've worked together. We've had plenty of laughs, and there's definitely some friendly fire between a retired cop and an old fireman in this one. But what we really get into is what it means to meet people where they are, why the best mentors in your life rarely come with a formal title, and how the skills you built across your career, ones you might be completely overlooking, can open the doors you never expected. Brad's answer to our one closing question is one of the most personal and unexpected responses we've had on the show. You will not want to miss this one. All right, so let's get to it, and let's get knee to knee with Brad. Welcome everyone to another episode of Knee to Knee. And I know it. Those of you are going to roll your eyes at me again, but I'm going to say it. I am super excited about who we have on today. And there's an exact reason why I'm excited. As you heard in the introduction, Brad Zeeman is here with us. Okay, we're going to say Brad Zeeman's in the house, right? Welcome, Brad.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Mark. And it's kind of funny because as I listen to your podcast, I'm like, wow, Mark has all these amazing people there. They're very talented. They're intellectuals. They're educated. They're articulate. They're so successful in their careers. Why does he want me on this show? This is so crazy because I feel like I'm out of my element because my biggest flex, I think, is that I've got the maturity level of a 14-year-old. So we might have some fun with that.
Well, that'll make it a fun conversation then. It's definitely going to be good if that's the case. So, like I said earlier in the introduction, Brad and I have known each other for quite a few years. And I'm just going to start it off, Brad. And I know I threw it out there at the beginning that you reminded me the way you do things sometimes reminds me of a certain person. And I'll give you an idea. Brad and I worked for a software company. We worked for a staffing company, then became a software company together. And I loved working with Brad, even though I was the one that broke the software half the time. I was the one always calling Brad going, I broke this. Okay. Because it was brand new to everybody. So I was breaking crap. And so then what I noticed over time with Brad is if you've ever been around somebody that they get asked the same question over and over and over and over. And Brad always, and it amazed me, he would always, because we'd be on long calls together and people would call in and he would just, okay, all right, let's start here. And we're good. And the next call, same question. Okay. And he would just treat everybody with the most dignity and respect and kindness and start from there. So when I said before the call started, Brad, that you reminded me of Larry Sagers. Now, those of you that know who Larry Sagers was, if you remember, Brad, when you lived up in northern Utah, KSL had a greenhouse show on Saturday mornings. Larry Sagers was their guy. And
I was I know that name.
Yeah.
How does it click?
And it always amazed me. We would sit at the house listen to call-ins because my wife does landscape architecture stuff. And we're listening to all these call-ins and it would be this next question and the next question. And then they were almost always the same. And he'd answer it like he'd never heard the question before. You do the same thing. And that's very admirable.
Thank you. I think the key to really relating people is meeting them where they're at, right? I can't expect everyone to have the same background and experiences as I do. And the same would go for you, right? You don't expect people to have the same background and experiences. So you go, where are you at in your experience with X? And we're going to discuss it from there. And if they're more advanced, then you go, awesome, I'm going to learn so much in this situation. And if they're less advanced, you go, you know what? I am going to grow so much. And hopefully I can help this person learn something in this exchange. So
I love that. You're gonna learn so much from someone who's more experienced and grow so much from someone that you're helping. I've never heard that said that way before. Brad, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, all righty. So what you'll find with Brad and I, we've had a lot of banter over the years, and some of that comes from our past lives. As I mentioned before, Brad is a retired Utah Highway Patrolman and had lots of stuff in the Highway Patrol. And as those of you know that I'm an old fire guy. And if you remember, fire guys and, police guys, we always have a little beef just for fun together. And
Well, it's
we've done
because everyone wants to be a fireman, right? Like,
yeah.
people love firefighters.
Well,
If I kicked in someone's door in the middle of the night, I was an a-hole. If you kicked in
But if I
someone's
did
door in
it-
the middle of the night, yeah, you're the
what
hero.
would they do? They'd make us
So,
cookies.
yeah, exactly. I never got that.
I used to
if I
tell
did
people
get
that all the
cookies-
time. Yeah,
If I did get cookies, it's because I went to the fire station and hung out with the firefighters.
exactly.
They always had the best lazy boys.
Yeah, that's true. There's always good ones there. So, Brad, I'm curious about, you talk about this learn and grow. Where did you first start seeing that? I mean, because there's a process when we talk about meeting someone where they are, right? There's going to be some people, some of our listeners, this the learn and grow is going to be an entirely new thought and concept to them as well. And so where did you first start kind of putting that together? Where did that make sense to you? And then the last part of that would be, who have you seen in your life that actually helped drive that and help to make that instill for you?
Yeah. So you'd mentioned my law enforcement career. That really helped to shape where I am today as a person, right? So I was very, very fortunate to have some amazing mentors who really helped me to learn. And they helped me to grow on a personal level because, I started when I was 22. I didn't know crap about crap, right? I was just a kid.
But you
And
thought you
so-
did. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Just like every kid, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
As you mature and you grow, you realize, wow, I was stupid and I did some dumb stuff. But like I said, I had some great mentors who were able to sit me down and go, all right. So when we talk to people, here's the best way to relate with someone. And one of the things that I learned very early on is that people have an innate desire to be heard. And if you can listen to someone and not just hear the noise, but
Right.
actually listen to someone and understand what they're asking or what they need to get out, you're a lot more successful in relating to that person. So I really worked on that listening skill and hearing people. Unfortunately, I had the opportunity to deal with people on the very worst day of their life, right? Over and over and over again. And when you deal with someone in a situation like that, you have to approach it very delicately. And even though I had been through it, they hadn't. And so I was taught very early on that when you approach that, you need to listen, you need to be caring and not just pretend you care, but actually care, right? There's a difference and you feel it as a human. You feel when somebody's just full of crap and they're just going through the motions, right? But that was a really big stepping stone for me. I had a great sergeant who was just, hey, we're going to make sure everyone here gets better at what they do. And he really enforced that. Later in my career, like I said, I've had many, many mentors. I had a lieutenant who was just a stickler when it came to writing. He was the grammar Nazi. He was the spelling Nazi. And you would send in your report, the sergeant would send it to him and he would send it back. And you're looking at all this red ink because at the time we used
It's like a fourth grade paper coming back.
Yeah, we used the red pens and it would come back and I'd be like, wow, I thought I was a pretty good writer. I grew so much under his tutelage. I could hit him up and say, hey, Ken, I need some help with this. What is the grammar rules? And he'd just bounce them out because he knew them. He was so intelligent, such a smart man and such a good leader, but he never belittled someone. He never talked down to them because they didn't understand those grammatical rules, right? He treated everyone as a person and met them where they were. That was huge for me to be able to see that because quite frankly, there were some people who did not write very well. And when I was a sergeant and I had to grade the reports, I recognized that and went, wow, LT was amazing to be able to help people grow through this process. And people didn't like rewriting reports, but every time they did, they learned something because of that.
I think it's so important. And I hadn't thought of our conversation shifting this way, but you've mentioned mentors more than, a couple of times now. And I think it's so important as for men to be able to find a mentor that they can actually bounce things off of and talk to and things like that. I remember years ago having when I first started selling, and my boss at the time was just the worst sales trainer ever. We actually got thrown out of an office, literally escorted out of the building. I was like, wow,
Wow.
if this is the way it's going to be, man, I don't know how people do this. Right. But two of the most successful salespeople I've ever known personally are my folks. And they both were very,
Hmm.
very successful in their own fields.
Right.
And I remember calling my dad. And I just said, all right, dad, I want you to take the dad hat off. Cause he's very, very, he's retired, retired military, just this can put that hat on, right? And I'm like, take your dad hat off, and I want you to put your mentor hat on. So I want to be able to call you when I have direct questions. If I'm running into a struggle, I want to call you. And I did that once, and I did it more than once. But one time in particular, I'm calling him, and I was sitting outside of a customer, and I was just like, "What am I going to do? This guy's not happy, right?" And you're trying to repair what's happened, and it wasn't something I did; it was something our team did. And now I got to go in there
Right.
and eat crow or whatever. That's what I'm thinking. I just got to go. And I called him, and he was actually in Alaska on a business trip, and he says, "I've got a minute. I can't go in the office right now. There's a moose standing outside the front door." Oh, okay. Well, that's not something
Okay.
right. So
Yeah.
he's sitting in his
Didn't
rental
expect
car,
that.
and I said, "Okay, so what do I do?" And he just gave me, probably from a sales standpoint, because he met me where I was at, like you're talking about, and he met me there and said, "This is what I would do." And he gave me the most amazing advice that I've been able to use and pass on to those salespeople that I help train, and we work through the process. And that really is that when I'm sitting down with you and we're having a conversation at that moment in time, you are the most important person to me. So I need to hear and feel what you're experiencing. And so then once I really can, now I can articulate that in a way that you understand, that I understand, right? And then we can move on from there. And that has always served me really well. And I've used that. It's not a gimmick. It's the paying attention, really
Yeah.
being in the moment, which is amazing.
Well, and like I said, when you're sincere with people in that way, they feel it and they react. I mean, it's literally an energy that just goes out from people. You feel that energy. You can call it, a sixth sense or, the spirit or whatever you want, but that energy is real between people. And you
Right.
know when somebody has good intentions and when they have bad intentions. Your body knows. And you might sometimes go, I'm not going to listen to that because this is a really good person and I like them, even if they, maybe are not having the best intentions. It's important to listen to those feelings, right?
Right. Right. What are some of those things that you looked at? I mean, as you were talking about the different mentors they had, were there anything have you ever done anything where you actually had an official mentor that you actually went and said, "Hey, I want you to mentor me in these processes," or were you fortunate enough to just have them right there, or a combination,
Hey,
I
you
guess?
know what? I just kind of bounce through life and, if it happens, it happens. I hate trying to force things into place because it never works for me. If I
Okay.
sit back and go, it's going to fall together, it almost always does, Mark. And so I've been very fortunate throughout all of my professional career, whether it was in law enforcement or whether it was when I did staffing or sales or in the safety world that I'm in now, I have been so fortunate to work with incredible people. I mean, Craig Flinders, you didn't get to
Yeah.
know him so well, but I know he's a legend in the company we work for. And you probably heard his name on a daily basis. One of the greatest mentors I've ever had. And it was because he met everyone where they were and he treated everyone like a person, right?
He did. He did.
And that's the really cool thing that I've learned as well is it doesn't matter if you're a CEO, a politician, a movie star, a custodian, a line lead, a packer, whatever, you're still just a person. You just have a different job, right? Because we're
Right.
all people. I don't get starstruck because I am able to separate in that and go, look, this isn't Mark Marrott, the host of an award-winning, amazing podcast. This is just Mark Marrott. He's just another dude. He's just another person like me. He just has a different job. And I think that's a key in a lot of those interactions is people get really nervous because they go, oh, well, that guy's so successful. I don't know if I can talk to him. Go talk to him. You can. I
Yeah,
promise.
yeah,
He's just a person with
absolutely.
another job.
Yeah. I kind of felt that way. It's interesting because I feel sometimes I get feeling that way depending on our guest that's coming on, right? Is you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this really cool person coming on. I'm so excited about it. I interviewed someone last night who will have come out in about 3 weeks or so. And as I did my research on him, he is one of only 3 people out of the 8 billion on the planet that have accomplished something. And
Wow.
yeah, right. And so I'm going, dude, oh my gosh, this guy's, you have to sit back and go, yeah, he's still a guy. And in the end,
Yeah.
he lives up in Quebec, Canada. And in the end, he's a volunteer firefighter, right? So I had no idea, right? That part I missed. And he goes, oh yeah, I fight fires. Wait, what? Well, this is great. So then it just becomes this regular guy, right? And I think
I
you're right. We need to remember that, no matter who it is, we can, I think, is it Maxwell that wrote the book 360-Degree Leader?
Mark, I don't read self-help books. We've talked about this before.
I think it is.
I'm the guy who's more likely to read a graphic novel or sci-fi fantasy book. If you try and make me read a leadership book,
basically,
I'm going to sleep.
One of those instances. Mark, know your audience. No, but in that
to
book,
be fair, I've sent you a couple of self-help books before.
You have, and
it's
so
very rare.
But in that book, it talks about the 360-degree leader isn't the fact that you are only led by those above you. You are actually had the ability to lead from all around you. So everything from your peers to even your bosses to those people that you're assigned that maybe your direct reports, you still have that ability to help lead and guide. And I think the biggest thing comes down to, as you're saying, you're meeting them where they are, you're hearing what they have to, listening to what they have to say, and then really going from there, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can have so much impact up and down your workplace, whether it's workplace or community or whatever it is, up and down the ladder, so to say, when you come at it
Absolutely.
that way. Yeah.
Well, and I think when you do that, you really get to realize, okay, who are my leaders? And not just people who have the title, right? But those informal leaders who everyone turns to and says, hey, how do I do this? Right? Because they're out there. And if you understand who those people are, they are such a huge resource to help you get any task accomplished. Understanding who your people are makes all the difference in the world. And again, it's literally just taking the time to visit with them and go, all right, tell me about your background. How did you end up here? I want to know more. What do you do when you leave here? How do you maintain your work-life balance? Which again is so vital. So many people forget that you have to have a life outside of work. It's not about working 60 hours a week. It's
Right.
about having that time off to spend with your family. Most of us don't. Some people do work for work. Most of us work for that leisure time to be able to spend time with our families, to be able to give a better life to our families. So yeah, it's important to not forget those things as you interact with people. What's important to them.
I think, I had a guest a little while ago tell me that we need to approach life with curiosity. So when you're sitting down with someone and you're meeting with them and having a conversation with them, what don't you know? What do you want to know? And you start going curiosity, asking questions to help them. I had a lunch a couple weeks ago with someone that I typically struggle with. And I thought,
Mm.
I'm just going to sit down with this person. We're going to go to lunch and I'm just going to ask questions. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Because I knew a little bit about this person, and then come to find out, the walls came down, and that lunch turned into actually a really enjoyable experience. Not because I was doing anything amazing, but I was just trying to probe and ask questions to really hear this person and to see them beyond that label that we often put in when we have that. It's like, oh, I don't want to talk to that person, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to let my wall down just a little bit to probe and ask questions. So approaching life with curiosity, I think is a really interesting way to look at
Yeah.
those
You were
things.
curious, not judgmental. It makes a difference.
Exactly. It does. It definitely does. So how did you, let me ask this, you transitioned from law enforcement. Now you're overdoing safety,
Yeah.
and your path to that, was interesting, right? I know
It was
unusual.
unusual.
It was
Yeah.
unusual. Yeah. Yeah. It was one of those of like, okay, wait a second. And so now you're working for a company, and we don't have to do names and all that, but you're working for a very large company, and you go all over the place helping set up facilities and safety stuff. Is that right? Am I
Yeah,
understanding
I
correctly?
do. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's a large Fortune 500 company that has its hands in a little bit of everything. It's basically a full supply chain supplier. Like they can package, they can manufacture, they can warehouse, they can ship, they do everything. But I fell into a role as a senior safety manager, and I travel quite extensively across the country, and help make sure that people stay safe, make sure that people follow processes, make sure that people understand processes, because it doesn't matter if you've got the best policies and procedures written. If people don't understand them, it doesn't make any difference, right? It's kind of like, I think of it like this. I remember being a kid and asking to use the car. And if my parents said no, I'd be like, why? Everyone wants to know why. And if they said, because I said so, why? Once you have the why, then you can go, I accept that answer. And so I try to share the why as often as possible. And sometimes the
Yeah.
why is, well, look at this nasty picture of this person who lost their finger. That's
This is, oh, I'm sorry.
exactly.
This is why.
That's
Not
reserved
even
for
going to
special
edit that out. That
situations.
is not going to.
That's perfect.
It was supposed to be just a bent finger.
Do you know what? Sometimes falling out of a tree will do that to you, Mark.
It'll
It's
mess
okay.
you up.
I get it. So look, here's the transition though. When people are in law enforcement, they tend to really box themselves in and they go, I'm just a cop, right? And this is all I can do. And that's why you see people go for their 20 years, retire, and then go and work for someone else in law enforcement still, because that's what they think they are. They say, I am a cop, rather than I work as a police officer or I work for this agency. What they forget is during that career, they learn things like conflict resolution. They learned writing skills. They learned interpersonal skills. They learned leadership skills. They learned how to take care of a traumatic, chaotic situation and be the voice of reason and calm to everyone else around them. They learned all of these skills that transition into the public workforce so very, very well. And that was one of the things I realized after I left law enforcement, looking back, was like, wait a minute, this career has done so much for me and giving me a lot of great tools. And so that was really how that transition happened, is I started to recognize some of the tools. And once you do that, then you can start selling those tools to employers. And it took me the help of a very good friend to realize that. And I hit him up after I was getting out of law enforcement and said, hey, I've got this amazing law enforcement resume. I've done, canine and training and SWAT and motors and, all the cool things.
How do I translate that into private sector?
Yes. And I said, please look at this resume. Help me. And he got back to me. I didn't know what he did, but he ran a staffing company. He'd seen a lot of resumes and a lot of people. And he said, look, Brad, this is a great resume, but you've got to word it different because here are the skills you have. And I never realized it until he started pointing it out to me. But once he did, I went, aha. And that light bulb came on, right? So that's essentially how that transition happened, by relying on another mentor in my life who was there for me to help me through something at the right time that I didn't understand.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We just never know who we're going to interact with that's going to help guide wherever we're at. If you're working towards something, always keep that in your mind, I think. And then you'll, as you said, it will work itself out. If you got to be pointed the right direction, but then it'll get there. But well, my friend, I'm going to ask you the hard question that we ask every one of our guests. And that is, as we get close to wrapping up today, we could talk for hours, and you and I have spoken for hours in the past, not even blink an eye.
Indeed. Indeed. That's the hard thing, right? When you go, hey, I've got this time limit, we got to get rolling, because these discussion and conversation format podcasts, I love them. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you coming on without a doubt. And dude, I'm going to have you back on again, because we just, there's lots that we can cover and chat about. So the question that we ask all of our guests is, what is one thing that our listeners can do today to build deeper connections with those around them?
Do you know what I think? The biggest thing you could do is just ask yourself in any interaction, what would Mark Marrott do?
Goodness sakes, don't even go there.
And look, you're going to understand that you are going to work with people in a way.
Wait, based off of our conversation a little earlier, I was doing the wrong thing. What would Mark Marrott do?
No, this is Mark Marrott after his father enlightened him and said, hey, look, whenever you have an interaction with someone, they should feel like they are the only thing that matters right then. You're not answering your phone. I mean, if I'm on this podcast and I'm, playing on my phone, you're not the most important thing right now. So when I say, what would Mark Marrott do? I mean it. People need to come away from an interaction going, I'm important and I matter to this person I just had a discussion with. And it needs to be sincere and it needs to be from the heart, from the soul. And they need to feel that energetically. That's my one thing. What would Mark do? Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. We've known each other for years and I've never had anybody say it that way. So I'm a little bit humbled. I'm a little bit embarrassed, but thank you. I appreciate that because when you say that, I think of how many dozen people that I know that I go, yeah, that's the same as me saying, what would Joel do?
Right.
He hates it when I say that. Same thing. And he's going to listen to this and go,
I've thought that before too. What would Joel do? How would he approach this? So, wow, it's starting to get that time of day right there. I'm sorry. I've got a little line on my face from the blinds.
Oh, no,
okay. I've also said that, but Mark, I said that a little tongue in cheek, but I absolutely mean it.
I appreciate that.
Your approach with people is very dialed in. People understand that you have their best interests in mind and in heart, even when you've had to reprimand people. And I've seen that happen. I remember when you were working in the middle of the cornfields and you had some folks that you had to reprimand. And it wasn't always easy for you or for them, but they knew you had their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important.
Well, children of the corn was an experience.
Right.
But no, Brad, thank you. I'm going to say it again. Thank you so much for coming on. Man, I always love talking with you. And so I appreciate you taking the time. And those of you that took the time to tune in, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today and getting to know Brad a little bit. And I hope that you can actually take his one thing and you will have someone in your life that can replace the Mark Marrott because you know somebody that you want to make sure that they're having that same impact for you. And so yes, please take that and really dial in and be present in that moment. So thank you for tuning in and please make sure you like and subscribe. All the crazy stuff the algorithms tell us we have to say so that we can continue to grow the channel. And we want to get this information out to as many people and men as possible. So thank you again. And thank you, Brad. And we will catch you all on the next go around. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.